Today's sponsor of the Vision Quest podcast is 920 Hat Company. Leather patch hats are in, and 920 Hat Company is here to hook you up with your very own custom hat. All patches are lasered on top-grade genuine leather and on popular brand hats like Richardson and FlexFit. Whether you're looking to show off your business or want a one-of-a-kind hat for yourself, 920 Hat Company can do it all. All the hats are handcrafted right in the Fox Valley, but worn across America. With over 500 hats in stock, they guarantee fast turnaround times. Honestly, Liam, looking at these hats, solid, right?
Yeah, they're pretty. I like them.
I like that patch itself.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, one-of-a-kind stuff. I know his name's Trevor. He does great work. He's actually gotten I think we got a knit hat coming.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, we got that coming. So we're really excited to have these guys on board as a sponsor. So get down to check them out on Facebook. I believe they're on Instagram. Check them out, man. They got the best hats, I think, in the Fox Valley, if not in the state.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So get down to 920 Hat Company on social media and check them out. Okay. Episode number 3 today. It's the third one. I could have had 4 today, but we'll narrow it down. Bring it down to 3, and we are actually honored to have one of the coaches that has been honored with National Coach of the Year. Kaukauna Wrestling head coach Jeff Matczack, round number 2. You're back for another round, huh?
Yep, preseason, postseason.
Yeah. I think I messaged you about trying to do something like earlier in the season. You're like, yeah, let's wait till things kind of button up. So
yeah, we were going to do a cheesehead one, but then it just starts snowballing on you. And
well, you get to the postseason, and things get crazy.
Yeah.
You just can't help yourself after that. So let's talk about it. Three-peat season, huh?
Yeah, it was. It's all by itself, first of all, because your son, this is his first crack at it.
Yep.
He got one, and so you have to take it as that. Each one is its own entity, and we want to talk about the repeats. Now our seniors were a part of all 3, but we had members of all the classes.
Yeah.
And so, they're all trying to get a piece on the action and getting a team state title along with their individual accolades. So yeah, it was there for the taking, and we took it.
You did handily. I'm going to go through and probably add up all the point scores from duels and things like that, and just to see what the margin was. But I mean, it was, what was that team sectional? No, it was team state. They only scored 10 points in the first 2 rounds. I mean, whoa, that's crazy. So just knowing, and I only know some of these kids just to, obviously in the past couple of years, or some of them I've seen since they were small or whatever, but just knowing the ability that these kids had and that they pulled together just going through the season is pretty remarkable, being that, some of them are seniors. Some kids could come into a room and just be like, oh, it's my senior year. We're probably going to win. And just kind of ride it out. But it doesn't seem like guys really did that. They pulled together pretty tight towards the end, especially. And you guys talked about that as far as watch these guys towards the end of the season. Now, something might be a little weird now, but watch them as they grow together. And did you see that happen?
Yeah, I think we got a good start to the season. I think we had a good middle of the season. I think we had a good end of the season. I talked about it on another podcast last year about availability.
Yeah.
About having your kids available, at least having 12, 13 or all 14 of the kids wrestling at all the times. And we did have some injuries and illness and that type of thing that everybody else does. But I think we're as healthy as anybody in the state. When you have a good team and you can do that, makes it, obviously you're putting up scores week in and week out and maxing out in your tournaments. And so, yeah, it was really good from that way. Seeing them still, well, I just would say too, if you go back to the sectionals, and I've always said the conference has some good teams. We have, full lineups and hammers in most of the teams. And, Oshkosh West came out of that other regional and they were 5th or 6th or whatever in our conference. And we had them in the first round of team sectionals and really wrestled well in that duel. We should beat them. We beat them very handily in December, but we didn't have Greyson and Peters wrestling in that duel. It was the day before Minnesota. And just elected, and so not only adding those two, but everybody stepped up and just wrestled really well. And then And you look at against Hortonville, and I know they didn't have all their guys, but we had a lot of young guys go in and compete really hard. And there was just something about, what dual meets meant to these kids, that, okay, this is a dual, and we only had 9 duels going into the postseason. We wrestled our conference schedule and none other. Yeah. And I was, obviously, you got to concern a little bit about that, but it was actually refreshing, I think. You go and you wrestle 20 dual meets sometimes during a year, and you win a bunch of them, and it just becomes another duel. And our kids were really hungry to wrestle some good teams in duels and be really challenged and have it mean a lot.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So with the tournaments that you guys that you go to, they're out of state and things like the 2 or
just
whatever.
Just one.
It's very true. Yeah, yep. Minnesota. Yep. So, but you guys had some in the past, obviously, that were, Iowa or whatever. But when you're going into that stretch, because you're not really postseason yet, but when you're going into like a tournament stretch like that, like you mentioned, PD and Greyson didn't wrestle the duel. What factors weigh out in that? Was it, like someone just wasn't feeling well that week, so give them a break so that way they can rest going into that weekend? Like, how do you guys balance? There's a lot of, just the state championship duel, realizing the moves that you guys had to make weren't confusing at first, but then you look at it and you look at the numbers. Oh, okay. Well, how do you guys balance that?
One thing is you want the kids to wrestle as much as possible.
Yeah.
For one thing is they have career goals. They have career accolades. They want to win 40 matches. They want to win 50 matches. They want to win 100 in their career. They want to get up on the Kaukauna career history list. So, look at our seniors. They lost probably 40, more like 50% of their sophomore years during the pandemic. So, there's that type of thing goes into it, which is you want to give kids opportunities to wrestle. And I've offered kids in the past, hey, sit one this week, that we know I want to wrestle. I want to make the weight. Well, you might get a forfeit. I'll take the forfeit. There's that. Yeah. And then, when you get into, some of the duels and, if we're making back-to-back weights, sometimes a dual meet followed by a 2-day tournament, it's just doing things to help some kids that might be struggling in December, making that scratch weight for consecutive days in a row. And, and that's what, the naysayers out there would say, well, then they shouldn't be wrestling that weight. We're talking about a team. We're talking about a team champion dual meet program here. We're not talking about, knocking somebody's son out of the lineup. Right. He's cutting too much weight, or this or that. And we're talking about, there's no other place to go. Right. You've got 20 really good wrestlers in your room and you got to squeeze them into a 14 weight class box, soon to be probably 13. So there's that. And, we also, like with team state, sometimes it's, getting kids experience for the future, getting kids at, getting them a match before the finals. If you see you might need them, it's maybe holding somebody, not showing, if somebody's got 2 moves, they do really well and they're on your reserve squad. Yeah. Maybe not using them because you don't want to show the things they do really well that we are expecting them to do.
Kind of holding them back. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Like things we expect them to do in the next duel. Like they're going to get a matchup where they're going to hit this technique to the back and get 6 points for us because they should. And why advertise that? So
I don't mean hold them back as in a negative way, but just kind of keeping that secret behind, we don't want them to see that thing we got. So, okay. Yeah.
So there's all kinds of factors that go into, who you put out there. And we used, extra kids this year, but for the most part, we had our 14 guys and 195, we were switching around and we only used Cole for one match, but he had multiple injuries toward the end of the year. Yeah. And, but he had a darn good one match down there, beating a state qualifier. Yeah, that's right. Yep. Against Waukesha West. So, all of our kids up and down the lineup were pulling those type of matches out. Yeah.
So it was interesting because like I said, that with this being Liam's first year, as far as high school wrestling, we'd always gone to duels and gone to a couple tournaments or whatnot, but watching kind of the poke of the first year when you go into Eau Claire North, tournament, when the first tournament hits, and I think everybody, but Winzicki winning that match against Mulvaney, big match for him. Liam winning the tournament, I wouldn't say handily, but pretty well, very strongly. He, then we had some other guys that came out, and placed fairly well. what do you decide? I guess not decide. What do you look at going into like tournaments like Cheesehead, things like that, as far as performances? And do you guys change your training? Do you try to pull guys off the side and train a guy and be like, hey, we've noticed this a little bit in this one tournament. Let's go ahead and work the kinks out of that a little bit and make sure that we're going strong into this, Cheesehead or even Minnesota. Do you guys individualize it like that? I know you have so many coaches in the room. Obviously you got a lot, you can work on. Do you guys take guys off to the side like that and kind of work them during practice? Or do you just say, hey, 10, 15 minutes after practice, let's do this? Like, how's the dynamic in the room after you get your hands on a tournament and see how everybody's kind of doing,
There's nothing new. Even when you go into your first tournament or match, there's really nothing new that you're going to see if you really understand your kids and you're watching them.
Yep.
Coming into the season, and then your first weeks of practice, your scrimmage, you know what they do well. You know where they want to be.
Yeah.
And the higher level kids have more things they can do. And but there's still, the places they want to be and the positions they want to be. And so, even early in the year, there's not a lot you're going to change from beginning to end, let alone from 1 week to the next. It's there's a lot of mindset things that probably are more important than anything else. And asking them how they felt before the match. And when all those kids went out in Eau Claire and they did really well in the finals, 3rd place matches, 5th place matches, they did well. They were, there wasn't a whole heck of a lot. There's maybe more tactics that you talk about than there is techniques, because we're going to get back in on Monday and we're going to hit our same drills and this is what we do well. And we might give them 10 things and kids are doing 3 or 4 in a match. And you're kind of covering everything that everybody does. And, around Christmas, we're getting more scrambly and more, not that we're not early in the year, but we're starting to talk about, being able to fight out of some positions that, we're going to get in, and just having other options. And most of the kids, they have those, but then as a team, you're really hitting on them more at that time. I just, over Christmas, we spent 5 days working bottom leg Turks. So just, you're seeing a lot of kids finish takedowns with opportunities to score some points. And even if they're not scoring points, if they can Turk a bottom leg off of a double or a single that they're dumping onto the mat, and they can split his legs and keep his hips down, it might be 15 seconds that they're riding that period out, let alone, scoring back points. So all of a sudden it just started to take off. Our kids are getting turns in January like crazy with Turks. So those aren't things you might hit that week 1, but we didn't this year. I remember we did one year, like, hey, all of our doubles, every time we finish on the mat, we're looking for this. We didn't. And then, it really started to become from the smaller wrestlers to the larger guys, just hitting a technique like that. So everything takes its own course. You see where you can improve your guys, and it's showing on film, and then, they watch it and we practice it, and they're getting it.
So I'm not going to break down match by match every single tournament. It's just going to be kind of a generalization. If other guys want to do that, that's great. But because there's a lot of detail that you guys put into each athlete, each wrestler that you guys have in the room. There's, certain guys have certain goals, like you said, and each guy has either something coming up that they're trying to reach, things like that. So do you find that those guys get distracted by that? You as coaches, I know you guys know what you got to do to, maybe help get them back in line. Does some of that stuff sometimes ebb and flow with those guys, as far as they focus too much on it and you got to kind of rein them back in? They're kids. They get excited about something.
The biggest thing is a loss, and everybody takes a loss. Now, Greyson went undefeated this year. He's the only one that did. You've got to go back to, Noah Buddy, maybe his senior year. That's 2010. Since we've had somebody go undefeated. So it doesn't happen in our schedule all that often. We've had guys with 1-2 losses, but of course there was the pandemic year. Both him and
Asterisk
went undefeated, and they may have that year. They were both state champions. I'm talking about Jagger and Greyson. So, they were good enough, and that could have happened. But handling a loss, is probably the biggest distraction. And you do that early in the year, and just having that defining success mentality of what competing and closing the gap on somebody. And, if you're going out against somebody that, you've reached a level where you expect to win every time you go out there, and then you end up losing a match. Well, you have to break that down and treat it as a little temporary setback. And if you wrestle them again, this is the adjustments you're going to make. If it's from somebody out of state, well, then, you use it as a tool to try to learn from it. And it's not just what you need to do better, but watching what other people are doing, and our whole team can pick up things from, other guys out there.
No, I was just at conference and watching the middle schools the other day, middle schooler wrestlers, and you have there's that word of reload or rebuild, and you obviously a lot of teams. There's probably a few teams that use this reload, in the state, and some are. You guys always are. So like even just looking at the middle school. So I think at the end you had you were talking about growth and some of these kids in watching these high schoolers wrestle. And these kids have something to look forward to as far as, they won state this year and all that progress that you guys make. Do you see that the older kids, the high school kids, are trying to make a place going forward for these kids coming up and not focusing on it, but realize that they've made a place in history at the school to be able to allow those kids to jump into, to be able to carry it on? Is that something that is also kind of on their minds when they're practicing wrestling, or they think, I don't know if they talk to you or sit down I know Liam talks to you, but as far as what they're trying to leave behind for themselves as a legacy, are they concerned about that? Do they talk about any of that? I know you guys as coaches talk about, this is what you're leaving as a legacy, things like that. Do the kids take that on? And then, cause the kids are watching down below.
Yeah. Obviously, we have our Meet the Ghost night where our kids come in and get poster sightings, and you try to make your kids into professional athletes for one night where they feel like, they're signing autographs and things like that.
Yeah.
But, the other part of it is, we talk about epic losses in our room with our high school kids as much as we talk about, the great wins, just things that happened to kids in the past, and then how they responded from it, and then came back and ended up winning state that year after taking a loss here, or taking a loss there, or taking multiple losses in a tournament. And sometimes, like in the case of like an Eric Van Evenhoven, losing in the Cheesehead quarter or semifinals to somebody, and then beating them in overtime in the state finals. Yeah. Those are really the things that, and when we talk about those things, those kids are hearing legacy, and it's not just legacy of how they finished and how they got their hand raised all the time. It was how they overcame adversity. Yeah. How they didn't embrace losing at one single bit.
Right.
These are all kids that despise losing. Yep. They hated losing more than they enjoyed winning, and that's what made them great. And but they responded the right way. Put everything back into their training, solve problems. And that's a legacy that I think, I think all of our kids in our team this year, we can go back and say this was a turning point for that kid. Yeah. That made them to what they are right now. And I think a lot of young kids can draw that. Our middle school, speaking on that, they won our conference tournament yesterday, and it's not a normal conference. It's 24 teams. Some of the best in Northeast Wisconsin, and we won the JV state tournament in Wisconsin in Wausau West. So we have benchmarks, and we put as great priority. Obviously, varsity states at the end is at the top of that, but there's checklists along the way that say we want to do this and we want to do that. Yeah, and we check both of those boxes. So when we graduate 13 seniors this year, it looks really hard to get back to where we were, but we definitely have put ourselves in a position to have a nice team in the future.
So you speak of legacy, and we talk a little bit about, adversity or coming back, and talked about Cheesehead a couple of times. Legacy of Cheesehead, that came up, I don't know how many weeks after the Husky, and that one's blurring a little bit. That one's after Minnesota, correct?
It was right before.
After.
No, it goes
before.
Eau Claire, Minnesota Cheesehead.
Correct. So with that being said, you talk about maybe guys having a tough tournament in Minnesota, things like that. And you're talking about bouncing back and the growth from a loss, not necessarily accepting losing, but just the growth from a loss to create a more winning attitude, I guess. But when you guys go into a tournament like Cheesehead, it's not a simple tournament. I mean, it's one of the toughest national tournaments, high school tournaments, I would say, in the country. So going into that, how are you setting kids up and you can only do so much as a coach. I mean, you still have to rely on the athlete themselves to do work and prepare themselves. How do you go into a tournament like that with, you have a strong lineup, you have good kids, and there's no doubt that they're going to wrestle hard, but with things that have happened throughout the season, going into a tough tournament like that, how do you balance practices? How do you balance the focus of maybe a guy who is probably slated to win it and you want to make sure he does for him because he's your athlete, but how do you go into practices and the mindset of going into, we wrestled this one, Minnesota was tough, but this is Cheesehead. How do you kind of put a guy that not through a grinder coming from Minnesota, but at least get him back in line to be able to be competitive at such a tough tournament like that? Minnesota was tough. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. But, we had good kids take, multiple losses there.
Mm-hmm.
And, but it was a different type of tournament. Now, Minnesota, they changed their format this year where kids could take 3, maybe 4 losses there. That was never the case. It was a line bracket tournament, double elimination. And so, if you had a kid go 1-2, 2-2, it was what it was. But kids got, it wasn't a scramble like the Cheesehead, but it was in some ways in that they had 2 brackets. They had an upper bracket and a lower bracket, and they just kept wrestling them.
Yeah.
So, mentally, some of our kids, our 13-pounder Michael, he took a ton of losses there. I don't know if he won a match there.
Yeah.
Outside of a bye early on.
Yep.
And now you go into the Cheesehead, and we know how that goes. You're going to get 7 matches, and you can take 4 dings there, and it can be really damaging to morale. And every bracket has those guys that take those losses. So we that's why we have so many kids with double-digit losses. I mean, I think Judah Hammond was one of the top 170-pounders in the state, and he's at 10 losses. Going into 9 going into the state
tournament
semifinals, against Riddle, and he gave him his 10th, and he was wrestling the best I had seen all year. But that I again, they see the records on our state board going back 10 years, and they see a lot of good kids with 8, 9 double-digit losses that are getting on the medal stand down at the state tournament. So again, that's just something that they embrace, that tough schedule, and they our kids definitely at the Cheesehead, we really, I thought, maxed out. We dropped a handful of matches that we were right in, and we could have won it. You look at Liam, that overtime match, he's right there for the taking. Him and the kid that won the tournament.
Wayzata, and then
he lost. It was in on 2 and didn't take it, but he came back and got some wins and put himself, into a high place. So that's just, that's all just, talking to him after, but you really got to kind of prepare them for that as you go along, that kids you're going to meet tough matches. And
so, and you talked about too, like the losses that double digits, whatnot, but those losses, like Liam's his losses were all out of state losses up until the state tournament. He hadn't lost to a Wisconsin kid at all. So no, I mean, that's got to be a confidence builder just for any kid that's, going into like a Wisconsin state tournament, knowing that you can go through, hey, I took care of business. This is going to be a good ride, whether you're freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. When you kind of, you feel like you're rolling and rolling and rolling. We talked about some of the kids not having success and some of the failures. What happens to a kid when he's winning too much? You can't win too much. Don't get me wrong. You can't win too much. But, young kids can be like, I'm on top of the world. I can do whatever. You got to be able to bring those guys down a little bit. I mean, did you have a lot of that this year where you haven't?
Because, that's telling you that your schedule's not what it should be.
Sure.
You have to challenge everybody.
Yeah.
They all have to be challenged, and they all were. I mean, Greyson, I believe, he probably had a state champion in the Minnesota finals. He had a nationally ranked kid in the Cheesehead finals. He had a state champ in the quarterfinals and semifinals. He probably had I'm not sure of the order here, but they're all getting those guys. I think of, Petey. The biggest butt kicking I've ever seen him take was to I think the number one kid in the country, Ben Davino. And I know he's number one at his weight class, but you could argue pound for pound, he may be at the top just as far as his, what he can become at the next level as, maybe a 133 or even lighter. So he made us look like we never wrestled before.
Liam ran into him, Yep,
before. and we're doing really good things, out of the gates. But his motor was just, and he put on a takedown clinic. Did about 6, 7, 8 different takedowns on us, and ran that score into the 20s with takedowns. And one thing, if you noticed, we had to wrestle Jacob Herm 5 times, but every time we wrestled him, he said he has a very high motor.
Yep.
But if you look at the state tournament, I think Lucas he became a little bit of Ben Davino in his own way, in his own little culture here in Wisconsin at the Kohl Center, and started, multiple attacks and reattacks and single legs and getting to doubles and front headlock and moving. And so, I think he learned from that match. And so I don't know if he doesn't wrestle that match and have that, I mean, obviously he came off the mat, his head was spinning. You think that you're the worst wrestler in the world, but you just wrestled the best kid in the country.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
Better learn something from that butt kicking. He did.
He did.
There's no doubt about it, because you saw it unfold before your eyes.
Liam wrestled Davino. They were young. It was at one of those New Way tournaments, and he actually got a black eye from Davino because Liam got up from a takedown, and Davino went back at him, and it was almost like an ankle pick, but he just shoved Liam out of bounds. Well, Liam rolled into my chair and got a black eye off my chair. Davino didn't care. That was at that level, the way he was wrestling there. I mean, I could already tell that he was going to be a whole different beast going into high school, stuff like that. So that's a tough guy to go against. That's no slouch. I mean, even to me, just guys that we know, getting a takedown on someone like that's spectacular. It's just one of those things. So you balance those out and you weigh those types of matches out. With PD, having last year was kind of a weird, or the finger, the injury that he got, the path that he had that he wanted to take to try to get to where he got to this year, which is exactly what he wanted. Was that one of those moments where he thought he was the worst wrestler in the world after that loss? Was that one of those moments where you guys had to kind of bring him back to practice, like, hey, calm down and say we're good, kind of thing, and just kind of bring him back in and rein him in? Was that tough for him to just kind of realize? I wouldn't say it showed up in matches, but just kind of just the way he thought of himself.
Yeah, he won his next match in the Conci semis, I believe, and then he had to, then he wrestled in the third place match, and he got beat again by a really good kid. So, you're going, oh, geez, and that kid had his way with us on the feet, not like Davino, but he scored multiple takedowns on us and had a high motor and countered really well. We had positions, and all of a sudden those positions weren't there. So he was beating us to positions. And I think, it was definitely a moment. I think, for Lucas too, that the finger injury was his freshman year during the COVID. And then last year,
right. Yep.
He marches all the way to the state finals.
Yep.
And we had been majored by Corrigan at the sectional. And, it was like, all right, you see this all the time. Things can turn around from one week to the next. And there's the things that Corrigan did really well, and there's the things we did really well, and we've got to stop the things he does really well and get on our things. And it didn't happen. He went and did exactly what he did to us the week before, and I thought we wrestled maybe a little bit better, but that was another moment. That okay, he's gone. He's an All-American now.
Yep.
Division II, which
number 7 in the country, I think. Yep.
Incredible. And then now he wanted to get back to that spot and make it right. So I would say, getting there and getting it put on him.
Yep.
And then, the Davino match, there's just a few things that really inspired him to make his run.
Good. That's awesome. So another story, he had a 4-time state champ on the team.
Yes, we did.
Still do. I mean, the year's not over with, but so Greyson Clark. So let's talk about that for just a second, just from start to finish. It doesn't have to be an hour long about it, but so him coming into Kaukauna and him having goals, he was already a pretty successful wrestler already with the accolades that he had coming in. Did he walk in and say, I'm going to be a 4-time state champ? I know Liam did with you. Did Greyson come in with that type of, was he like, I'm going to be a 4-time state champ. I know I am. And that's what I'm going to accomplish.
I don't think those words were there. It was
sure.
Definitely wanted to be a state champ his freshman year.
Yeah.
Just taking where his feet are at that time. And
right.
He had a rough Minnesota Christmas tournament. And
he told Liam a lot about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And he, and it was a culmination. It snowballed on him a little bit because he had the semi, that was the match, he had in his hands.
Yeah.
And, it slipped away, and then another one slipped away, and then the 7th place match, by that time it had snowballed to where, he was just he was out of it a little bit. So
sure.
Made adjustments with just, I don't want to say weight cutting, but just how he was gonna manage that a little bit. And
the approach.
Put some weight on and things like that, because he's a whole different looking kid right now than he was, as all these kids are when they're 106-pound freshmen, and then they're middleweights and upperweights in some cases by their senior year. They're totally different. So there was that. And, but then he had a great rest of the season, and then led to a spectacular career.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
So, it was just about getting that one. I remember I can go right to where we were after that match and where we talked and, decided that was going to help us win a state title. And it did.
So because I remember he had to beat Corrigan as well, I believe.
And he lost to him at sectional.
At sectionals.
Yeah. Corrigan was a sophomore, and
they pinned him at state, didn't he?
He did.
He pinned him at state. So, I mean, that's, him winning as a freshman, but I mean, did he carry on as far as like, everybody likes to win the championship, but was he the type of person that carried on? Like, I just pinned him. That was awesome. Like, he carried that match on more than he carried like in his head than he carried maybe the championship on, because it meant something to him, because he just lost to him. And when then you go and stick him in the finals, that's got to feel pretty good. Was that something that he carried a little bit more than just the championship? I'm sure he can answer better.
Being a state champion, just in my opinion, is that was it. It wasn't who he was going to wrestle.
Yep.
How he won.
Okay.
It's getting the job done and winning. He beat some really good wrestlers. I mean, he had to beat Patrick Spray.
Yep.
In probably the semis. He ended up being a state champion at 113 last year.
Yep.
Patrick, very long, like we were kind of tall like they are, but he was a whole nother level of problem.
Yeah.
But he wrestled, just a really good tactical match and got to where he needed to be and won that. So there were other guys. It wasn't easy by any stretch. That's what 106 this year was the same way. You're going to see these guys, they're going to be the future. So
yeah,
that was, there was a bracket, and then in the back of his mind, Corrigan's on the other side, and it wasn't seeded that year. I think seeding came in the year after. So, we were naturally going to be on the opposite side of the bracket as Corrigan, and they both came through, and that was really good to see. And, knowing that somebody, we got ridden in the sectionals. That was the one thing. The third period, he rode us a long time.
Okay.
And I was like, that's not going to happen again
this time around. Yeah.
And I think we got the first takedown, and there was some quirky things. I'm not going to go back on that, but I sat and watched the match from last week, and I said, you didn't lose the match. He ended up getting more points on the board than you somehow. That's exactly what happened. Like, I feel like you were the better wrestler. You were in better position most of the time. And at the end of the match, he had 6 and you had 5 or whatever. And how the hell that happened, we'll never know. But you can't think, like, he was very confident going into when that match happened that, it wasn't that he lost to him. He just, and then he goes out and puts a cradle on him and pins him.
It's beautiful. So his junior year, I think I don't know. To me, the junior year was, I expected, for lack of a better term, his junior year championship.
Last year?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It was expected.
After he won that first one, then it was, because he got better. I mean, he went from 106 to 126, and
he leveled up.
He just was, he became an incredible rider his sophomore year. That's when that took over.
Sure.
Crab riding and, tilts. He didn't score a ton of tilts his freshman year. He was just riding, and so he wasn't, there wasn't a lot of upper body locks. He had done a lot of Greco, as a kid. And so that was a position as a freshman, he could get to. And it was getting down to being a great high school wrestler. And so his single leg was better. His riding was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And that's what happened his sophomore year. And he had Hayden Halter in the finals, who was a, 2-time state champ and get second the year before. And he majors him. So then now you're going into your junior year and he's at 138. And the when you do that, the bracket kind of spreads out a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think Hoyt Blaskowski was at that weight, was seated, pretty high, and Greyson was seated pretty high, and Hoyt got beat, and we ended up wrestling the Germantown 52-pounder this year was there, and that he ended up, go on his way to a pin, on his way to a tech, and he pinned him at the end. So it was just him going and posing as well. He was going to
pretty much, fine. Yeah. So now this year was a little different. I mean, obviously it was his fourth time, but it was also added on top of you getting National Coach of the Year. So that's pretty damn cool.
Yeah.
So, but you got that before. So let's talk about that a little bit. Where did they give you the award at?
Well, I found out regionally at the Cheesehead when Meldau showed up and they did all this stuff there. So, and then the week later, then they sent a letter because I think there's 7 regions in the country and we have like 5 or 6 states in our region. And then, then they take the regionals and then a committee chooses the national. So there was a letter on my chair. My wife threw a letter down in front of my mailbox and I opened it and it said, we got that. So that was that.
That was that.
Yeah, it was 2022 and I'm on to 2023 now. It's January 2023. So it's from the year before. So it was good, but it's good promotion for the school and the wrestling program and all our coaches and kids and families. So I looked at it that way, but I didn't change anything. Probably.
You don't have to. And so here's the thing: you're pretty modest, dude. And it's not that you had to take any and gloat about it, but I mean, if it weren't for those kids and if it weren't for those parents and the school or whatever, none of that shit would have happened. No. So, but you put the work in. It was Coach of the Year. It's not Team of the Year. I know it takes a village. Totally get it. Tell me your thoughts of you see this, you're like, did things come to culminate fruition for you? Like, all right, I'm not saying I deserve this, not that type of attitude. I don't see that, but just like,
all right, man, I'd rather do something that's not, voted on or something like that. Like to me, a team that's top 10 in the country or top 3 in the country or something like that. That's so hard to do with, where we're located and being a public school. But having a team that, goes out and beats and you're the coach of that team, like that has some teeth to it. Yeah. I look at what Simley, when they were second in the country a couple of years ago, it might've been last year or the year before. Yeah. But, that's unreal. And it's usually Blair and it's going to be Montini back in the day.
Wyoming Seminary.
Yeah, it's all that. But then there's those public schools and now you have Stillwater, not Minnesota, but Oklahoma is up there. And again, where they're located in the country in Stillwater with guys going to wrestle for Smith and all that. That's a big part of doing that and big school. But I mean, we had some attention in the polls this year, and I really like that stuff more than coaching awards.
Well, we ended the season 44th in the country still. So I mean, that's like you said, the teams that you've beaten and through the tournaments and things like that. I mean, it has teeth to it, and at the end of the day, you really gotta put into perspective though. And so you have contacts with a lot of different coaches. I mean, you're not just talking to verbatim down the road or any of those. I mean, you talk to guys in Minnesota, you probably talk to some of those nationals. So you put things together. You're a smart dude. You're able to put things together when you're talking to these guys. How are they doing this? They're successful. It's not that you're taking things from and doing exactly what they do, but the wheels spin and you start seeing, oh, well, we do this. We just got to change this a little bit. We do this. I mean, so there's a lot to be said as far as what you do in general. Just the state final, the team state finals, for example, just the way that you guys run the gamut with changing your weight scales with these kids and putting this guy here and this guy here. You guys see all this and you have the right guys in place, that are coaching with you. You guys pay attention to that stuff. But at the end of the day, you're the brainchild. You're the guy that puts together. So, I mean, high five to that, because that's something that's to be accomplished, I think, by a lot of coaches just in the state. So I congratulate you, because it's well-deserved, well-earned. So with that being said, now you got Greyson, 4-time state champ coming up, hasn't done it yet. You got your coach of the year. And I know you don't let that stuff kind of cloud the vision because you're more team oriented, things like that. But at the end of the day, does that kind of fire you up a little bit more kind of going in? It's got to fire you up a little bit.
There was just a real high priority on getting Greyson that fourth.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, making sure that, because that's a once in a, coaching, and in Division I, he's the fourth one.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that the 20 some in the other divisions isn't, but I'm just, if you want to break it down, it's, since Keegan O'Toole, then you got to go back to Jesse Filkey and Kevin Black. And those names they're just epic. And, it's 80 years of wrestling in Wisconsin, the WIAA. And, prior to 1980, it was the big schools and the small, they were all together. There were no 4-time state champions until Black. I think Hanutke might have been the first one. There were some guys in the 90s. Yeah.
Okay.
There was guys. And then Kevin was the first, he was undefeated, but he was a Division I champ. And then those two others since then. So you're looking at a quarter century since Kevin won it. And then, it's just not, when you kind of look at the, the accomplishment, it's like, and what you have an opportunity to do, you gotta make sure that happens. And so, and for the most part, it's not being derailed by an injury or an illness or something that would happen. And Greyson always really took care of himself. And, as far as getting sick at the end of the year, that wasn't going to happen. And it just wasn't. It just, those are things that just aren't going to happen.
Yep.
And then it's a matter of going out, and probably more than anything is relaxing, being happy, because sure. You've done it all. You've worked, you put yourself in this position. Nobody's going to beat you. It's you're going to beat yourself because of the pressure or things like that. So just go out and want to have fun for yourself.
So with that being said, leading into the back half of the season, then coming up to like individual conference, and we talk about that. I think we all kind of griped about that this year, just kind of like, oh, it's going to be 5 times we see everybody kind of thing. But going into that postseason with Greyson, he had already been handling guys pretty easily. So I think everybody kind of understood that was the line. That's what's going on. I was confident in it, and I just even watching him just this year. So going into those individuals with what the whole team, and then winding up with 9 guys going, stuff like that. What is your thought process now with, you've had those tough tournaments. You had the Minnesota that was tough, kind of beat some guys up. Cheesehead was pretty tough. You had Pulaski tournament. The Pulaski one was pretty decent for most guys. They turned out pretty well. What do we have for a turn? What was I don't remember what everybody kind of placed at that one.
At which one?
At Pulaski.
Yeah, we won that.
Yep.
Outdistanced Luxembourg, who was, state champs.
Yep.
Bayport was a team that, they were seeded.
That's right, yeah.
In the state, pretty high. And they lost to Marshfield in the semis. So we knew that was a team. If they were missing a guy, I think, not one of their high point scorers, but again, if you're missing a guy, that's points. But even with him, we had enough distance there to say that, we've got an edge on them at a lot of weights. So that was, that tournament's always great because it's so much like a sectional tournament, in my opinion. It's like in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we're going to be wrestling in a sectional tournament, and it's going to be very similar to this. The only difference is, if you don't get the wrestle back if you lose in the semis, but you, if you're winning that tournament, or placing top 2 in that tournament, you've got a good chance to make it. And in a case like, Nick Jenkins, who took third there, and he beat Gantner of O'Connell Falls in the 3rd place match. That's a very similar type of wrestleback. That kid had 40 wins, and here Nicky sitting there with 12, 13 losses or whatever it was, and he beats him, rides him at 3rd period, and it's like, all right, that is a sectional wrestleback, 3rd place, just like like he can do this. And all the guys that wrestle well at Pulaski, they all they all did their thing then when it was time for sectionals.
Yeah. So on to sectionals. We talk about not sectionals, we'll talk about regionals. Regionals, obviously whatever we have going on as far as the conference, get that done. But going into this postseason, are you prepared, number one, as far as with guys coming off of those tournaments to like look at a guy and be like, hey, you ready for this? Are you no injuries, no, maybe take a couple tough losses. Were there guys towards the end of the season that you're kind of wondering like, hey, you're gonna do all right? You're gonna kind of, did you have guys you had to pick up at the end of the season because they fell down from the regular season, or everybody's still feeling strong yet?
I would say Drew took a tough loss at Pulaski.
Okay.
And in the semifinal, then he came back and he took third place.
Mm-hmm.
Was probably the one that, but he lost to I don't know what the Luxembourg kid took at state. He might have been in the finals.
Okay.
But, was wrestling really well up until that point, and then just got into some bad positions, and could tell Drew's a real positive guy.
Yeah.
But I could tell he was taking it really hard. You could just tell because, Judah's going into the finals and winning it. Liam's going into the finals and winning it. And Luce went into the finals. And, and then, of course, you got your guys below. Mm-hmm. Connor's in the finals and all those guys, Clark.
Yeah.
And so he's kind of feeling like God, and just it was more talk. It wasn't even about wrestling. It was about having fun. And, it was wrestling's when you take a couple losses at the Cheesehead. He took a loss at the Badger Scramble to Gish, who's going to be in sectionals now.
Mm-hmm.
Took a loss at Pulaski. And it's like, after he beat Mulvaney, it was supposed to be, everything was supposed to be good. And, and it's going back to Minnesota even. So he's taking this stuff and it's like, hey, things are going to get better.
Mm-hmm.
You have to just stay positive. And he went out, got third place.
Yeah.
And then he kind of got on a little steamroll, got going. And then, that attitude, pin at Team State. I think he's done. We had 14 duels this year and he's had 14 pins in every duel. He's a huge part of our success. And then individually, making it to the state tournament, going 2-2 and losing in the blood round. I've been there. I've lost that match 2-2 at state. So I know what that's about. And he was probably the one guy, but again, he's positive. Parents are positive, and just keep hustling. And been doing this a long time. You're going to have success down the road. There's going to be happy moments. Enjoy this, even though right now it just feels like things are getting pulled out from under you. But
so regionals, was that Nina? Where was that?
We had regionals.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Sorry. I don't remember everything.
Yeah, it was a repeat of the conference tournament. You take the Oshkoshes and Fond du Lac out. So, I mean, it was, you're doing that all over again, but you're going to see Peters and Herm, quite possibly again. And then, you're going to see, our 6-pounder Jenkins is going to see Perkovic and,
man, that was good.
Yeah. And see that Esser again, those three. So they're going to do it there and then they're going to do it here and then they're going to do it again. And so,
we'll breeze through regionals.
Yeah. So it's just like it's a repeat and he beat Perkovic, lost to Esser. And then, then the next week he beats both of them.
Both of them. So that was fun to watch. I mean, just knowing where Jenkins has come from and the work that he has had to put in, stuff like that. So knowing that he was able to go in, Perkovic, I think to me was the bigger win for him, just as far as the place that he'd been to.
He had Esser beat a few times in the duel back in December. And then, he didn't lose the match. He didn't step on the line, as we all remember. And after about 10 guys didn't step on the line in the JV.
Let's dig into that a little bit. Not putting the foot on the line. So that, it happened, whatever. It's, I'm not like Jenkins, you're fine. It's okay. Yeah. So what goes through your head in a moment like that? Are you trying to think of did we not, is there something that we missed, or was it nerves for him? Did he
no, he didn't step on the line. It just, and he had 2 cautions. So that was a point. Then the overtime was over. And as a really good official too, but as I'm going there, guys, put your foot on the line. You know,
Right.
you tell them to put their foot on the line,
Put your
and
foot
then
on
you
the
blow
line.
the whistle, and then they start wrestling so they can decide it and not
Yeah.
wait for one of them not to put his foot on the line. And because when do you decide that he didn't put his foot on the line? Maybe he said, "Oh, I was going to put the foot on the line. I just
Right.
didn't get to it yet."
Yep.
So I put your foot on the line. Oh, you know, like
Yeah.
that's the kind of thing. And
When he could have just said, "Hey, scoot it forward." Just, you know, I know I know you're trying. Just get it up there a second.
just
Yeah.
really loud. Just say, "Guys, feet on the line. Hey, your foot's not get it on the line." And
So
there were some things that happened earlier in that duel.
Yeah.
You know, the guy he was wrestling got on top of us in referee's position. You go back and watch the tape in the second period. Got on,
Yep.
put a hand on our elbow, put a hand on our navel, as you're instructed to in the book.
Yep.
And then got off and said, just as he was about to blow the whistle, he got off and said, "Well, nope, I want to go both up." And the ref said, "No, get on. He got on. He got off again. And the ref said, "No, get on." And he got on. So if that's not a false start, then I don't know what a false start is. But he ended up having, he had another caution.
Yeah.
And that would have, been a point as well. He had 2 cautions. So,
Yeah.
you know, they were both not stepping on the line. And then you had that, but it's just weird.
So I talked to Scarta a little bit
match.
about referee kind of taking and inserting themselves into matches and stuff. And he said it happens, and he does. Obviously he doesn't like it, and it shouldn't happen. But it's one of those things where it's like, really, that much, but it happened. So it's again, Jenkins, it's fine.
I'm
okay.
going to go off track here. Just another reffing thing I saw last night. You remember Drew Wenzicki in his 5th place match at the Cheesehead? He repeatedly got called for stalling. He was riding. It was a close match, but then it got ugly because he got 1-1-2. He was riding legs, and the Amory wrestler would stand up, and their coaches would yell, "That's stalling." So the ref blew it, stalling. And then we got the legs in, and he would stand up, and he calls for stalling again. He's standing up. We're putting the legs in. And I know there's some sort of clarification on when you put the legs in. Do you have the legs in on the mat, and then he stands up, or he's standing up?
Right.
And then you put the leg in.
Correct.
Whatever. You know, when his hands are off the mat and this and that. We don't have instant replay for that. But
Sure.
Drew got called for stalling over and over and over again. He ends up losing the match, and we go, and, I go down, and coaches are like, "Yeah, he's nuts. He can't put the legs in." I'm like, "Hey, when is it stalling on the bottom guy?" I thought that was, "No, it's stalling." They're yelling at me, "That's stalling on Drew." And I'm just like, all right, whatever. Well, I'm watching the Pennsylvania AAA
State finals
last night on Flow, and go watch the 160 match, and it goes into the ultimate tiebreaker, and the guy on the bottom is going to win the match. He's going to get out. He wrestled tactically enough, scored first.
Yeah,
they get into he's going to go bottom. So the guy gets on top of him, and he puts the leg in. They stand up, stalling bottom guy. The top guy won.
So where was this? So he obviously had gotten a stalling call before that, but so the guy on the bottom automatically goes to stand up to get out. Was the leg in before he goes to stand up?
It was sure, kind of. The whistle blows and
puts the leg in.
Yeah, and guy's standing up, and the leg goes in, and they stop it, and they called the bottom guy for stalling.
Had that happened in the match before, though? Had the leg ride happened where he stood up and they called
the
it
stalling? I think they were on the feet and things like that. Like it hadn't happened over and over again.
That's interesting that they called it instantly.
Just like, okay, so in Drew's match, you could look at it and say, well, maybe it's the way Pennsylvania interprets it. Yeah. I don't know. I've seen it kind of both ways, but that's a hard one.
We all have to go by NFHS rules, right?
We do, and then referees, with out of bounds and things of that.
Sure.
It's a little different in some states, but that can be interpreted probably state to state.
I think like you described, like with Drew, like, maybe with Drew's match, if a guy, like let's say Drew put his leg in right away, it was the instantaneous, and then that guy goes to stand up. Usually they just call, they call it potentially dangerous.
Yep.
That call. So it's potentially dangerous. Set him back down, start over, right? They noticed that pattern, though, of the up and down leg going in, and one of the guys is taking advantage of that situation. That's kind of what they see. They're taking advantage of that.
For sure.
So now you got to balance as a referee. How many times has Drew actually waited to put the leg in?
Yeah.
Because it feels like maybe the guy is going to get out. I'm going to put my leg in. How many times does he actually do that? So you got to balance that. But I mean, talking to Scarta today, just kind of discussing about, there are different, every guy's got a different view, because going from now the regular season and then going down to the state tournament and watching stalling get called, it seemed way different to me. Each ref is different, so I didn't get to see every single ref all season long. It just seemed like there was more talking to the guys on the mat about stalling than there was actually calling the stalling.
Yeah, I think our referees in Wisconsin have really improved in stalling.
Yeah,
going back
a
few years, like tremendously.
Yep.
From our cheesehead finals to the whole tournament, regionals, we got a good stalling call. Nick got a stalling call against Perkovic in that wrestleback, if you remember. But, that one, it was like, that was a tough one for the kid to take, to tie it up and go into overtime.
Yeah.
Because we weren't being that offensive. We weren't like, okay, if we're taking mad on him and really forcing it and coming. But, we were a little bit, but not enough to probably get one there.
Yeah.
But, those type of calls that tie a match at the end, I just didn't see them a ton. There was one match at state that caught my eye.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if it's one match of the 20 officials that are there and of hundreds and hundreds of matches that are wrestled, and you're thinking of one. I mean, I remember in the past, people would just walk out on Thursday night, walk out on Friday night, walk out on Saturday night, and be like, wow, that match was decided on stalling, and that one wasn't, that one wasn't. Do you think it was? Do you think it wasn't? And it's like, why are we having this debate? Like, why is the debate over stalling? Why is that the number one thing? And it's not anymore.
Not anymore, no.
I don't see that. There's obvious stalling, and then, it's not going to decide the match. It might change the tactics at the time, but no, they've become more collegiate, I'll say, in the way they call stalling.
Yeah. Yep.
Especially at the highest levels. Obviously in dual meets at Team State, they were throwing them out there pretty good, but I've seen it called much worse.
Sure.
At Team State, but they still call it much more there. But again, a lot less than we've seen it in the past at Team State. In some of these duels, I've seen 30 stalling calls. You just go back in the box score and track wrestling, and you count them up, and you say 30 stalling calls. Like, that's way too much. It
is way too much. And to credit, like what you said, that they have gotten a lot better at it. It's I think maybe what we saw what I noticed as far as seeing things is just maybe a testament to what they have picked it up, because it just seemed like it was so less at the state tournament. But hopefully that's something that we can, and we just talking to Steve, like telling people, get out and ref, sign up. We need younger guys. And in seeing that conference, it was good to see a lot of the younger guys that have started up.
I think what happens when there's a lot of stalling called, what naturally is going to happen in wrestling, and I've seen it because you just open your ears and listen, is that becomes the number one way of scoring points in some people's heads, moms, dads, coaches, the athletes, where you can get a takedown and you can get a reversal and you can get an escape and you can get near falls. And there's those four ways, and then you have penalties and things of that nature, which at the top of that list, the number one way of scoring points, because I can't score any other way in this particular match. So then we refer to yelling out the other kid is stalling, and that becomes our mantra. And I don't think it's healthy. I don't think it's teaching people how to solve problems, how to become more offensive, how to get yourself in a position to score. Yes, there is obvious stalling, but I've seen it so much where someone's losing 5-1 or 5-0. You're in the third period and they're on bottom or they're wherever, and people just screaming stalling. And it's like, there's a reason you're probably getting beat 5-0 is because your focus is on getting the other guy for stalling instead of scoring points the way they were meant to be scored in wrestling.
I was yelling it a lot at state. I'll be honest with you. I was kind of, so, I mean, in particular Liam's matches, because I really was, because we were so new to that tournament, as far as it was skin in the game, I wasn't really paying attention to much else but what he had going on, and just kind of watching some of the matches. The Roth match sticks out in my head the most. Yeah. Not so much Willie White.
It was weird.
It was a weird match. And to me, I believe that the referee not tainted, but he dictated that match in my eyes. I don't know. I didn't see every angle, but when you call a kid for stalling after 5 seconds of blowing the whistle, that's kind of weird. He was on the bottom, and they called stalling really quick when he was on the bottom. And I was like, what is that based off of? Like,
yeah, that was quick.
So
and the big thing, I would just say, yes, that was a factor, and you'll agree with this too. With Liam, it was finishing those opportunities he created for himself.
Yeah,
like he had a few chances in the Willouette match, less in the Roth match, but he did take him down. He didn't take Willowet down, but he had the leg up. He had in on a double. He was in rear standing position. He had a go behind him. He got up.
Yep.
We weren't able to get the two with the hands on the mat, but we couldn't mat return him in that situation. So, you finish those, and we were doing enough to get in position to score. We just couldn't finish takedowns on those two kids. But they definitely used some really good tactics, to hold us off.
I almost think, Liam got hit in the face quite a bit this year, but with a lot of what he does, because I have been pushing, I was like, hey, offense, got to shoot, man. The only way you're scoring points is by shooting. You got to score. Can't be afraid to do it, because if you're not doing it, you're not going to get it done. So as he kind of progressed through the season, and, he kind of did those things, but he almost felt discouraged because he wasn't completing, like you said, he wasn't finishing. And I saw him the night after, or the night of, and he felt it was his gas tank, and he was on the elliptical, and he was a little upset, and I get it. And I just asked him, and I left him alone. But sitting back and thinking about it, he said it too. He's like, I got to finish my takedowns. He's like, yes, you do.
Yeah, because you're finishing them, all year. It wasn't a problem until that point. But now kids are wrestling for the medal stand. They're wrestling like the juice is amped up a little bit. So now the takedowns there has to be a higher sense of urgency when you have a leg in your possession, and guys aren't going to go to the mat, and they're going to fight on the edge, and they're going to cut away from those rear standings, and they're higher level kids too.
Yeah,
that's why you're there.
Well, and the thing too is he ran into things like, as freshmen come in, they don't know all these tactics that these kids have going into maybe even their sophomore. Liam was getting his headgear pulled, the Minnesota Christmas tournament. And he had a kid. It was simple collar tie. It wasn't like the guy was just going out and reaching for his collar tie all the way across the head, pulling on the headgear when he's pulling on the head. So, Liam was complaining about it. He got 3 stalling calls because in that one match because of that. And I said, Liam, you have to understand, where the line is. Just because the guy's doing that, you have to understand where, if you're backing up, you got to move in. You gotta. And he just backed up, the whole time. So it was little things like that, just the tactics, like you were saying. I mean, these guys are seasoned. They know what they're doing. They have had that stuff done to them. So they found things that worked for them, and they got under his skin on a few of them. That's a part of the freshman gig, I guess, as far as not knowing and knowing. So we kind of got off track a little bit, but back onto the sectional part of the season here with, going into having a good couple tournaments with some of these guys. They're feeling strong. You got your, how many, 9 got through sectionals, right? Yep. So we got our 9 through, but that tournament wasn't just, we're going and we took care of it. I mean, some of the guys, they had to work at where they're getting to, Pasorski was one. I think Jenkins was another one, had to work, things like that. But where was your mindset going into sectionals? What was the goal? We know the goal is to get everybody through as much as possible, but as far as what you saw that season, what was your realistic goal going into that tournament, saying, this is what we're going to get? And it's not that you had doubts on kids or anything like that, but you guys are pretty analytical. You're statistical. You have the guys in place that do that stuff with you. What kind of thoughts were you having with the majority of the team going in? Was it okay, we're going to have to do this here? Or do you guys just kind of put it on the line, like, just go wrestle hard? And you guys as coaches were just kind of talking about all that side stuff. Do you let the kids in on that?
They know. If you win the regional and what's coming on the other side, I mean, they know.
Yeah.
It's not like you got to explain it to them. And they're hearing it at home, and they're seeing it on the social media, and this is who should make it through and all that stuff. So no, you just have to go and just got to go perform.
Yeah.
So sure, what 9 was there for the taking.
Yeah.
Would you have been happy with 7? Yeah, that's half your team.
Yep.
But you end up getting a loose in, which he was
awesome.
one that we were pretty sure of. Like there was no way that these guys, should beat him. I mean, there was one spot for the guys. Brock Arndt was a level above. So, but we always closed the gap on him. The 3 times we wrestled him, he just creamed us in the duel. And the conference tournament final was, we went the distance, and then we even closed it even more in the regional. So I think, that number was right where it could have been. And it could have been more. Like we could have gone 9, and I don't know. Maybe Nick gets beat again, but I look at Ben Kruger, the Oshkosh West kid who he beat during the season, did lose to him as well at sectional and I believe at the conference, but they were always 1-1.
Yeah,
going into overtime. Like that's how it was. Now we did beat him in regulation, that the only regulation match. So, he made it to state.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's a guy there. So I just think, there's always going to be a number. Sometimes you don't know which those kids are going to be.
Yeah.
You try to have a day, but we had sure things. There's no doubt about it. We had guys that were gonna make it, and the sectionals were a little strange for some of our kids too. Like they didn't wrestle in the finals who they thought they might be wrestling.
Oh yeah. Yep.
There were some, I look at Winans, Shepherd, who he's seen a few times and got the upper hand on him. The times he's wrestled him this year, but he got upset. I guess maybe it's not an upset, but, got caught and got beat. And so we're wrestling Oshkosh West, and he's a good wrestler too. But that was one that, got flipped around. So you never know what's going to happen.
Is that Schneider? Riley? Yeah. Liam's
Schneider,
wrestled with him for a while. Yeah. I actually wrestled with his dad at Oshkosh North. So it's kind of fun to see him make it through. But so sectionals, you guys rolling into state, and you're at that 5-week point now. You've had the tournaments, and you got your 9 guys, and just kind of heading down to Madison, snowstorm, all that stuff. So a lot of factors playing. Now you guys are heading down early. You're going down a day early. The guys are hanging out in a hotel room a little extra time. That can be taxing, as far as just the travel, and it's only an hour and a half. It's not 8 hours or anything like that. But so going down there a little early, finding out the things that you find out as far as, we got the snow, we got to deal with this. How are you guys in as far as the grander scheme of things, as far as what you're looking to do? You got this going. You guys just roll into the hotel. You guys just ready to roll, ready to go? Was everybody amped up? Or
it was good. It was that extra night for an old guy. I like being at home. And kids might like their own bed, but stay in a very nice place and
nice,
quiet. For the most part, down Liam's hallway, there must have been a shower that flooded our hallway because they had a bunch of fans out there. So before I went to sleep, I went and turned those off. They didn't hear them. It was kind of just that white noise. Yeah, there was like 10 of them, loud ones.
Oh, and,
those. But that would probably drown out any people talking or snoring. And the kids, they were in heaven because one, they didn't have people asking them, telling them good luck, how you doing, are you ready, are you ready, are you ready? Kind of showed that the practice the day before is a little overrated. We didn't really do much for practice. They went and exercised a little bit, but you're ready to go, so make weight and let's go. So they're sitting in a nice hotel room, and they got all these channels, and they got their phones and their games, and we get up and let them. They wanted to walk down to Walgreens or Subway, right around the corner, get some food, get out of the hotel, and get up and walk around a little bit. And but it beats sitting in school, that's for sure.
Hotel rooms are chicken coops. That's kind of what I call them. They're chicken coops. You get 3-4 guys in there, it gets a little sweaty and starts to smell like shit after a while, because these guys are just, and they're having fun, like you said. They're having fun. They're doing what they got to do, but we're planning out the U.S. Open right now and trying to figure out if I want to do a hotel room or Airbnb. I instantly went to Airbnb. I can't do a hotel with 4 people in a room. That's crazy. How do you guys do it as coaches? You guys all coaches?
Well, we had 3 kids in a room, and we put 2 coaches in a room. And,
okay.
They
extra day. It's crazy.
So they were fine.
Yeah.
They bring so much stuff down there, and it looks like a pig pen in those rooms. And it's stuff all over the place. But again, they kids, they like to be left alone.
They do.
And they're just there, and they come in and you check on them, and it didn't affect us at all. They just wanted to wrestle.
Right. So you get into the first day in wrestling, and I mean, as far as I know, everybody kind of watching the matches, the seating and things like that, and everybody has something to complain about. Everybody thought one was better than the other, kind of thing, which all plays out the way that it plays out. first matches come around. And how did those look to you guys as far as just the first round of wrestling?
Pretty good. I mean, Connor had the toughest one.
Yeah, he did.
Just, being that his draw really good, didn't wrestle in the state tournament last year. Yep. So he didn't get that. He didn't get the points. I don't know that whole situation of when he was pulled out, but that's for being the 6th seed, you expect to have a match, and then this kid drops to the 11th seed, and then he's got a rest. And then you got Hoyt Blakowski on in that block too as the 3rd seed. So now, but he got a wrestle back because the 11th seed beat him, and then he beat the 3rd seed. So now you get Hoyt to come back to the medal stand, and that was tough because Connor's probably, a guy that can win matches down there for sure. And that was the big one we saw right away. Yeah. And we wrestled Ramos really tough. We gave up 2 takedowns in the first period, and that was, it allows him to control the pace with tactics and that for the rest of the way. We got a stalling point in the 3rd, but we're not looking to get 3 stalling points to tie it up. Yeah. But if we could have kept him to 0 or just 1 takedown, if it's 2-1 in the first period, I think we win the match. Yeah,
for sure. So that's what 145. But Winans, Petey. So here's the thing: is the path with some of these guys, they're predictable. I mean, just there may have been a match or two somewhere that were just like, okay, this could kind of shake out to be interesting. But just watching some of these guys, so
they all had matches on Thursday, though. I mean, people thought that seeding was going to be they all had matches on Thursday that they had to be ready for sure. Yeah. And so the first round being top seeds, they were wrestling 16, 15, 14. Yep. But then now you're wrestling a mid seed that's thinks he's a medal winner. And he should. Mm-hmm. And they all had to get ready and have those. So I think, Peters, at DC Everest, that was a big one. I think, we had, Winans had Quentin Wolbert in the quarterfinals. I mean, that's a kid that was seated above him the year before.
That was a highlight reel right there.
Placing, I think we were 3rd and he was probably 5th the year before, but he was injured this year. So things kind of took him down, but that's a
tough match.
That's a quarterfinal match.
He handled them though.
Yeah, that's a kid that could be in the state finals. Healthy all year for sure. So in a lot of years, but that was tough. So we had to wrestle our best to get those 3 in Judah through.
Yeah, well, and Liam lost in the quarters to Williwet and the ultimate tiebreaker. That was a tough one to watch. Obviously their expectations talking of where, it should wind up and not wind up. And honestly, I can't say that I didn't think the same thing. I can't think that Liam didn't think or at least want the same thing. So I'm sure he thought the same thing. But when it boils down to it, I mean, obviously things happen. They go the opposite way. But now you go into the second day knowing that these are the rounds that if you're going to make it, this is where you got to make it. And I kind of, seeing where Liam's bracket was, I was like, I kind of knew the guys. I kind of seen some of the video on them and things like that. I don't really discuss that with Liam. When I watch video, I watch it by myself. Then I just kind of talk to him about some stuff. Hey, I noticed this. Then maybe whether he brings it to you guys or not and says, hey, my dad was letting me know about this, or I saw something that this guy did. I want to make sure that I'm doing well against it, or at least I know that it's coming, kind of thing. When you go into that second day with, this is now the blood round to be able to get into placement matches, who was, because I don't remember, again, I didn't see every single thing, who was in kind of the driver's seat in those rounds more than anybody?
Well, you had Liam and Connor, and Luce was bumped out. Yep. And Jenkins had to come back, and he had another, he lost 3-0 to, I think, Reedsburg. Mm-hmm. But it was not a close 3-0. Yeah. We just weren't in position to score. We were outmatched. Their buddy, he did not, he was underneath a lot and, in some tough spots, arms barred and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't a takedown clinic and he didn't get turned. Yeah. It was just, somebody who
takedown right up.
Yeah, just put a hard match on him. Mm-hmm. Then you look at the other two were Liam, had matchups, and he's got common opponents that are. You could find common opponents with these kids he was going to have that say he's, could give you a match like Willowette too. Mm-hmm. They're good, but we had to just rebound back at the hotel that night, and it was tough. But you get some food in and be happy. Yeah, you've got everything in front of you. There's one thing you can't get, and that's a gold medal, but you can get another color, whether it's second or third or fourth, and you've got to rebound. You're good enough. You're going to regret it if you don't.
Yes.
If you let this one bother you, you're going to go home. We've seen that so many times. Somebody who comes in high seed, has a tough match, and then never rebounds the next day. Happens all the time. So I'm proud of him for rebounding, coming back, getting what he does, and then moving on, to the next day. And then Connor, we already spoke of that. He has Blaskowski, and he's up 5-0.
Yeah.
And some quirky tilt pin, very quick, but to get reversed, it was going to be probably a 5-5 match. Yep. Now going into the later stages of the match, so it was I'm not saying if that doesn't happen we would have won. It's more. I felt just really good about how he wrestled the first 3 to 4 minutes of that match. He was up 5-0. He scored takedowns, scrambled, was riding, was doing some really good things, and. You're halfway through that match and you're like, he's going to get on the medal stand. And then it turned on him pretty quick. But Hoyt's done that to a lot of people.
Sure has.
He's difficult to wrestle. He'll
throws the kitchen sink at you.
He did it to Stoffel last year.
Yeah.
In the semis or wherever that was to that. So,
and then let's see. Then obviously, we know Greyson handled his way going through that. We obviously didn't have a question on that, but so now you kind of go into the last day. You got your placement rounds, and we had was it four that placed? 5 placed? Five.
Well,
placed.
the semi, was Winans and Peach. Peach had one loss on the year, I think, and we've had that history. It was Peters and Herm this year, but last year when Peach was at Kimberly, that was a 5. Yeah. That was a 5 time. We saw him in all the same events, but we wrestled him for 3rd place.
Yep.
And pinned him a couple of times and, beat him by a margin. Mm-hmm. Not saying matches weren't close, but if you can get a 4-point lead on somebody of that caliber, 5 points in the 3rd period and, you can run it out. But in the state 3rd place match, that was, I think it was a 1-point match and we got a takedown or a ride out or reverse, something at the end. And, but those placement matches, you can throw past results out the window. That 1 minute first period for one, and that Saturday morning placement match is always it's a toss up. So, but he did it. He beat him 5 times last year. And now, Peach is at a new school. He's having a lot of success. He's ranked really high, and we had him in the semis, and I think he got the first takedown on us, was putting a hard ride on us, and Brian just did Brian things. He just he got an okie choke for some back points. Just rode legs and got some takedowns and got a nice lead and put a hard ride on him and finished it. So that one was one,
It was a good one.
You say, well, you beat him 5 times last year. But
didn't wrestle him at all this year.
The kid moved out of our area. So, it was pretty important for him to get this win back on us now, right?
Yep.
To move,
reassert himself.
To move halfway across the state just to win that match this year. So he didn't have to do it 5 times.
Snatch that from him.
Yeah, that was like, okay, so now we got 6 on him now.
Yeah, that's even better. So, Greyson, you go up to the championship match. I mean, you obviously had a couple of them, but obviously this was a little more significant, 4 times. Is there anything you're worried about going into this match? I'll be honest, I didn't have anything that I was worried about watching Greyson when he was going to this match.
Well, we were back to back to back. So Petey and Herm was great match. I mean,
Yep.
in control all the way. And then, I'm not saying we shut down. He hit some moves on us, but we hit a takedown at the end. So we were scoring in all 3 periods there.
We're going to talk about, we'll talk about PD after
Yep.
this.
And then, but I'm putting that in the context of just how that, so you got 1 for 1 and then Brian loses a tough one.
Yes. Yes.
And then, so here we are. And I walked out cause you have the medals, stayed in there for when Brian came out. But then once, wanted to go talk to Brian and just not leave him go back cause he was crushed. So went and talked to him a little bit, had some time and then came back out and, Greyson was out there and was just, totally confident in that match.
I'll be honest. I mean, there's no, do you want to battle? Sure. There's no better way to be able to get it and just kind of go in and know, I got this. It's not even a question of what I'm going to do. And you got it done. So you got 4-time state champ. And you said 4th in D1, but how many times has that happened in Kaukauna history?
0. Yeah.
It's the first one in Kaukauna history. So it's in the record book. So that's pretty important. I mean, what about you? What about you going out?
Yeah, it was.
Were you nervous? Like anything? Like I'm not nervous in a bad way, but just like butterflies. You're like, this is the first one because you just talked about how much
I would say
the school matters.
I would say every one of Greyson's finals, they all felt the same way.
Okay,
even freshman year.
Okay,
just like you're confident, and there's only 2 things that can happen, and it's not like it. You have total confidence. He's done it, at a lot of levels and a lot of big tournaments. And he puts a lot into winning the Cheesehead, winning Minnesota. Like winning those are big, big things to him. Yeah. And, we got the Cheesehead twice. He got Minnesota senior year. So like every time he goes out there, he doesn't underestimate anybody. Like there's never going to be a time where like he's just not going to allow that to happen. Yeah. He didn't get to that point. So, and then there's, the things like, some freak move, like he did have a 2-on-1 little throw on us.
Oh yeah.
It was about, 1 second of, it was a takedown. Yep. And
then that was turned over.
Yeah. And then, no, he did get that takedown, but
didn't he reverse
there was a reversal that didn't go. So, there's that, but, it wasn't like it was a hard headlock, where he's stuck under there. He had our arm. And
I think enough to get ooze from the crowd, though.
Yeah, and people that say, freestyle and Greco and all this, wrestling, all that matters. Wrestling is wrestling, and all the matches that he's wrestled in his life, it was just, I'm gonna go through and roll through this, and I'm gonna get my one, and then I'm gonna turn it on and start getting takedowns again. Yeah, and
he did.
Yeah, he did.
He did that. I think that's kind of been his style since the beginning. I mean, I've watched him wrestle against guys before too, where maybe they got a takedown or something or a reversal on him where it just kind of slipped up kind of thing. Maybe it was a misstep or whatever that he made. But he always, like, it was either a reversal or it didn't matter. He was getting that back and then he was coming back harder. Yep. It gets that little switch that turns on, like it just sets him off. So it's always fun to watch. So that was pretty fun to watch him do that and have someone part of the team accomplish that. And like I said, you mentioned before, you're very team oriented school and stuff like that, as far as this is all for them kind of thing. So was Greyson kind of on the same thing? Like, hey, I'm really glad I could get this for the school. And obviously it's for him. Nobody doubts that. That's one of those things where those guys seem pretty well grounded, even just talking to Jake Stoffel and the things that he brought up and the mentality that these guys have. Like, I have knowledge now that I want to give back. Was he kind of one of the, I'm really glad I could bring this to the school, and this is something that I just really want to do. It's for me, but I really want to be able to bring it to the school kind of thing. Was that something that you guys kind of breed to in the room when you guys are talking about, you're not just doing it for you. You're doing it. This is for a team. This is for a school. This is a school pride kind of thing. I've heard you talk about that a couple times.
Yeah. After it's all said and done, you can look at what it does and, shows kids that they can, win multiple state titles. To tell kids, hey, 4 state titles is, definitely in the cards. Well, your freshman year, you go and you take second or you don't place, and then what? You're a failure.
Right. Yep.
It's just it's about one each year and placing as high as you can. But yeah, it is definitely a feather in the cap of the program. But for going up to that point, you're wrestling for your parents, you're wrestling for your school, you're wrestling for your coaches, you're wrestling for the college you're going to, you're wrestling for your academy that you're wrestling for all these people that you think, you're going to let down. And it's like, there's only one person that really, when it really comes down to it, because everybody loves and supports you. Like, this is like, you did the work, like you go out, just you win it for you.
For sure.
Because you wanted that. And that's why winning was important, because you wanted something. And had to just go out and do it for himself. And in the process, when it's all said and done, you can go back and thank people along the way, and also people are gonna say thank you. For sure. Like the Kaukauna community,
for sure.
Always, that are gratitude for just having someone be that committed and wear that orange singlet. So, but at that time, coming up to it, it was about just go out and do what you've wanted to do for yourself.
Yeah. Cool. Well, then there's Team State. Then we don't have to spend too much time on it, because like I said, the other teams, it was kind of the first two rounds, you still got to wrestle them. It doesn't mean that they weren't, competition, or that you didn't have some matches that were maybe close or whatnot. And we had some good ones. It's not to say that there weren't some ones that are really good for the kid to get on the wins aspect as far as that goes. But as far as closeness goes, Marshfield was the one that gave us the run for our money a little bit. They did a little bit of catching up in between. I think maybe there were some matches that, are going to go a certain way regardless. What after the wins, getting your first two dual matches done, going into that, what are you guys thinking going into the finals? And I'm not even talking about the three-peat situation, just the duel itself and the match itself. What was the process of what you guys are thinking? We're going to have these guys. Now I know this, maybe they'll do this or maybe they'll do this. Are you guys even thinking about what another team might do? Or are you more focused on what you need to do?
Well, I mean, you certainly have to put your feet in the shoes of the other coach.
Sure.
And say, this is what I have. How do I beat Kaukauna?
Coach C. Yep.
Yeah, you have to. You have to say, okay, because we've done it to a few teams in the past, Team State finals, where caught them totally off guard. And they're like, oh no, we didn't think of that.
Yeah.
And could they have done something about it? Yeah. You win the flip and then they end up doing something and you're like, really? Okay. All right. Thank you. And then, or we'll make a switch and they'll forget about a kid that we had. It happened a few times, and it's like, you don't want to ever be caught off guard. So you always, and there's not a ton of things that can happen, because whatever you weigh in Friday is the same weight you got to weigh in Saturday. You can't drop a weight. You can't bump up a weight. Those are what they are. So you've already played in all those scenarios, on Friday night, and said, okay, this is what I would do if I were them.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so there's that. And then big deal. They can do that. So we can do this and got to win these matches. So 220 was really it ended up being a great place for us to start, because
that was awesome.
It let us, it gave us a chance in the first three weights, and it gave us an opportunity to get bonus points in the last three.
Yeah.
And then winning the flip is what really gave us a chance to get bonus in the last three. And so now you're sitting there going, all right, now we just, Greyson and PD and Winans, they do their stuff in the middle.
Yep.
But we needed to win one of those first two, and we ended up winning both of them. And I just think our kids competed harder. I think that's what it came down to. They just competed. If you look at, the 40 matches this kid won and matches our kid won, it wasn't like, oh, we were better than them. I just think at that moment, our kids competed harder, and we knew we were going to get a good effort out of, and they did, Marshfield competed hard.
Yep.
We just competed harder in those critical moments of the match with the hustle. So they were there last year. They were there the year before. A lot of these guys on their team, very familiar with Team State wrestling. They beat a good Bayport team, which we thought matched up really well against them, but they competed harder than Bayport.
They did.
And when I went back and looked at that a little bit, and as we're looking over there, there was more sense of urgency in some matches.
Yeah.
second half of that duel. So we knew we'd have our hands full. So kids were ready and went out and got it done.
So you got 3 of them. And then to, cap off whatever you guys go into next season, knowing that going into next season, and we'd mentioned the whole reloading thing in the beginning and the outlook going into next year and speculation, whatever it is, but going into next year, how focused are you on now with, like, say how you went into this year? Does your game change at all going in now that you have a shift, we'll say, a shift in a lineup that big? Do you guys change anything as far as your focus or your strategies at all going into the next year? And again, because you guys are analytical, you guys look at things a lot. Do you see, you don't know who's going to be in the lineup necessarily, but you know who's coming up and you can kind of play out scenarios. When you guys go into the room and see what you got, do things change from year to year like that for you guys? Or is that what's made you strong?
The only thing that changes is if you're going to be a senior laden team and if you're going to be a young team.
Okay.
And we're only going to have a couple seniors in the lineup next year. It's going to be a lot like last year when we only had 2 seniors in the lineup.
Yeah.
We don't have a strong, our freshmen going into sophomores would be our bubble class with more wrestlers in it.
Yeah.
But, it's when we had like last year, you have different, older kids. And I think sometimes you have a senior laden wrestling team and it doesn't work out the way you want it to, because just because you have a lot of seniors doesn't mean that, okay, well, we're good, because seniors are looking on to the next chapter of their life. More seniors have girlfriends and go to the dances. More seniors are going to want to start making money.
Yeah.
Buy their own car.
Lifestyles change.
Have their own stuff.
Yeah.
I remember when I was 18 opposed to when I was 16, the relationship with my parents, things change. And and it might get better for wrestling, but it's not an automatic.
Sure.
Okay. It can, the best years might be your sophomore or junior year. And I think all of our kids, to a person, all those 8 seniors that started, they were at their best their senior year. And I'm probably more proud of that out of the group, that the seniors were the best when it mattered. Their last year, they kept ascending. They didn't plateau, any of them.
Yeah.
So, so next year, you say, well, now you're going to be young again. Yeah. Well, there's something about that too. And when these guys won it last year and they won it the year before with the help of some kids, like they were full of energy and really wanted to go out and, get things done. And okay, now those guys are gone. Now it's my turn. And so I think we've got to, we got to build that up now, where we didn't have to do that last year. It was about the senior group, 100% about guys, don't forget about wrestling. Don't forget about that. With kids, there's a lot of them that are going to their academies, doing all their things. They're doing outside of what you want. You provide for them. And training in the off season. They're doing a lot extra, but I don't know. Like some kids when they get the car and their parents, you'll see this kid does more training in 8th and 9th grade than he does in 10th, 11th, and 12th combined.
Because they drive to practice now.
Yeah, you see it. Well, they want their freedom.
Yeah.
And, and the parents need to give them their freedom. And with that, now here you are. And I think that's where, as a coach, you got to step in and say, hey, this is what you told me your freshman year.
Yep.
And that was because your parents had control of what all the decisions you made.
Yeah.
And now that they're backing off because you want freedom at home. Now what's changed here?
Yeah.
That can't, you should be doing more, because you don't have to wait for them to get home from work to give you a ride to AWA or to come into the school to lift or to get to a tournament. The license to drive should improve getting to the mat, not take you away from it.
Yeah. Your parents should have been holding you back from getting to all those practices.
It's probably 50-50, with seniors, with what a license does for them. And, I look at, our guys, our seniors, they were getting to wrestling stuff with that license, not driving away from it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll be honest. I put a post out on a page that we have, and I basically said, hey, because I got a picture of that ranking 44, in the country. And I said, that ranking doesn't come from nothing. So anybody that needs a ride, if you guys get to the extra thing, don't look at wins and losses in the off season here. Look about were you getting the takedowns you weren't during the regular season. Work on that stuff. If you need a ride to practice, call us. If you need a ride to practice, there are other people that are going to practices, call them. Anything you can do. I don't care if you guys are just going to just practices. That's fine. Just get something in. Anything in the off season. I don't care if it's the 2 days, 1 day a week. I don't care what, just do anything you can in the off season just to get that little bit more, Cause then once the season comes around, that stuff will just start to gel even more and click more once you get into the season. So hopefully we can give a hand a little bit, but that was kind of my idea of like, hey, a lot of these guys, like, the Winans and the PD and even Liam. I mean, these guys go all over the country. They go to Virginia Beach or whatever. Even when they're in 7th grade, not everybody does that, and I don't expect everybody to do that. But it was just kind of just a driving force behind the hammer that is and they're the nail of saying, yeah, let's do this. Let's keep this going. Let's try and get 6 and see what we can do just to keep everybody in check as far as, hey, you can do it. It's simple. We're all here to help. It takes a village. Don't turn it down just because it's hard. We can all make it easier on each other.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. There's that, the champions are training in the darkness. And there's no recipe for that. Like, I think some people think, well, we're not wrestling people and we're not this. Well, that's a decision you made, like there's so much that you can do, on your own. To improve yourself. So, I just think, and I'm not a burnout. Like, if I haven't burnt out in all this time, I don't see why anybody else would burn out.
Yeah.
That's just, probably more an attitude than anything.
I don't think the sport burns people out. I think it's people burn people out. I think that's what happens.
Why can a kid not say I'm burnt out on math, so tell their guidance counselor, don't sign me up for math anymore. Math class. No, that's not going to happen. Or I'm burnt out from taking out the trash or doing the dishes, or I'm burnt out from my job. If you don't like your job, then you got to find another way to make money. And if you commit to it, you find something you love to do. Now, if you love wrestling, it's easy.
Yeah.
If you love the accolades that go with wrestling, but you're not willing to do those things, then that's not going to fly.
Yeah. Totally.
If you want something, you have to find a way to love and enjoy doing it, and you'll get good. No doubt.
For sure. So looking at the next season coming up, it's going to be fun. Like I said, saw some of these 8th graders. I'm pretty impressed with some of the guys that I'd never even seen, and then watching them wrestle this past weekend. It's going to be fun. And it's not to say that you got lineups, you got wrestle-offs to do and stuff like that, but I tell you what, even the JV guys, we have a lot of guys that are strong. DeGroot, Sprangers, those guys all put something together and contributed to varsity this year as far as matches that they came in and wrestled. Whether a guy was taking a break or you just whether maybe you guys put him in the lineup just to get him some exposure. But it's gonna be fun. Well, you've been here a while. I'm gonna get you home.
All right,
you gotta get out of here. So I'm gonna end it with this. Congratulations.
Thank you.
A on Coach of the Year, B in the 3-peat. It's fun to be able to be a part of that and watch that, and it's fun to watch such a tight crew community as well. I mean, I honestly don't think we would have been like this anywhere else that we were at. So it's very nice to see, and I congratulate everybody that's a part of it. You have a great coaching staff. You guys do a great job. So I'm gonna end it on that. Get wine and song going here. What you got? Anything coming up this? What are you doing in the off season?
Wrestling.
Trees, walls. Yeah. What are you wrestling?
No. There's some downtime, but get through the school year and looking forward to weather. It's snowing out right now, so I'm done with that.
Liam's not liking. He said he's going to try and find a school when he goes to college that's not involved with snow.
Okay. All right.
We'll try. But again, we had Coach Jeff Matczack on, National Coach of the Year, 3-time team state champion coach. I could say a lot more, but there's just too much. So I appreciate you coming on. We're going to end it there. Peace. All of our episodes are brought to you by Appleton Tattoo, located at 117 South Appleton Street in Appleton, Wisconsin, right off the main drag on College Avenue. You can't miss them. I've had some work done. I have a Celtic cross that covers my back that was done by Jason. We're not done yet. Jason Winans and crew, the artists that he have there, those guys are the best in the Fox Valley. They are definitely one to go to if it's something that you've just been kind of throwing around. They'll make you feel comfortable. It's a very clean environment, very nice crew, and very willing to get done whatever you need done when you need it done. You can message them on Facebook. I know they're on Facebook. You can give them a call at 920-604-8289 and get in touch with Jason Winans and crew at Appleton Tattoo, located again in Appleton, Wisconsin at 117 South Appleton Street, right in Appleton. Very flexible hours, great crew, clean environment again. I would not send you anywhere else except for these guys. Appleton Tattoo.